What's up, y'all? Tuning in for another hit with me. This session, we're gonna call this staying inside the ball, or in some of our terminology, spacing. And so we're gonna go through some drills that really work on, one, creating space, creating these angles that allow us to stay inside the ball, but also maintaining them. And so typically we would like to look at, or I personally would like to look at the lower half, but I know we do a lot with the lower half. So today I actually wanted to switch it up and actually start up the chain a little bit with the bat and being connected. Sometimes looking at that part of the body can definitely get your lower half to self-organize. And so we're actually gonna start with the first drill. Is gonna be a connection ball drill. And so I know there's been a lot of different ways that people see the connection ball being used. One of them that we like to use is wrist to bicep, like this. Me personally, with some of the kids that hit here, I've felt like the kids that push their hands and do this move to try to get inside the ball, here, you can show that a little bit better, where they try to get here to get inside the ball. The wrist to bicep really helps. And then there's another one, I'm gonna have to flip my hat around for this one. Another one is where you put it between the bat, and it's like up by the neck and head area like this, and you hold the ball like this. And this is another way of using a connection ball. And me personally, I felt like the kids that tend to cast the barrel early and don't have that space early, that drill helps them quite a bit, because they have to create more of an angle, or like a hinge with their lower half, to be able to stay inside and do that drill correctly. And so that's what we're gonna start off with, a little bit of front toss, take a few swings with the connection ball up by my neck, my head, and then we'll move on to the next drill. So here we go. And just from launch too, by the way, no stride. Oh. Little back ankle roll piece. Those two swings are pretty good examples of like spinning with that backside, which is causing me to lose space early, making it really hard to do this drill correctly. And so what you want to see too is this ball kind of drop right in front, not necessarily going back behind, because when I tend to spin, my barrel comes out, that ball drop really early. And so I'm going to try to do a little bit better job of staying anchored with the lower half, take the intensity down, try to get this ball to drop more like right down near my back foot. Ooh, cool. Let's do a couple more with the ball. I like using the ball, but sometimes you got to chase it down, so sometimes it could take a little extra time, but it's all good. Inside. Cool, so now moving on, I'm gonna kind of use those initial swings to diagnose kind of what I need to do next. And so something that I was feeling with those connection ball swings was this early drive and spin with the lower half. And so I was giving up some of my spacing with my back hip. And what I mean by spacing is, we'll step into this camera, is when I go out like this with my hip and I spin early, I lose the ability to stay inside the ball with my hands, this elbow to slot. And so then you'll see me stand up and come out and around, where I get some of those snap hooks. And so I'm gonna use those initial swings to use the next drill to help with that. And so what we're gonna do is back foot farm board. And so something you'll see is if I try to drive with that lower half, you'll see this push. If I try to spin, it'll give me a ton of feedback because it's a slippery surface. And so again, just really trying to stay anchored and create some space with my back hip and create that angle. And so this could be one, creating space, but also you'll notice the board, when I do it correctly, will kick back, which will help me maintain space and direction later on in my swing too. So another thing to notice is obviously not, the best swings in the world, but a lot better spin up the middle, not so much snap hooked, low ground ball line drive, a little bit higher line drive, a little bit better spin on those balls too. And a big part of that is the space I'm creating, allowing me to stay inside that ball longer. Another way of getting that feedback is also using some heavy balls. And so I actually brought one up, some like Plyo balls. And so I'm gonna have Brandon toss a couple of these as well from this to really challenge me to stay inside the ball and stay through it. And so something too is if I don't get inside initially because I don't have the space, it's hard to stay inside and stay through it. And so what I mean by that too is, like I showed earlier, if that hip gets in the way, I can't get inside and I start casting around, now my bat path is gonna wanna come out and around towards third base for me as a righty, first base for a lefty. So it's gonna be really hard to stay through the ball towards the middle part of the field and get backspin. And so I'm gonna do the same drill, have him toss a couple of these Plyo balls, really challenge me. Should be a little bit difficult the way I'm moving today. But again, very good for hitters to really challenge staying inside the ball or creating and maintaining space. So let's do one more heavy and then go back to a couple regulars. Go back to a couple regulars for a couple, then we'll go on to the next drill. Early back yank. So now we're gonna go on to the next drill, which is just launch with a step back. And so really what this drill is very similar to the farm board drill, except for we're gonna do it without the board. And I'm actually gonna mix in what we call a blend. And if you don't know what I mean by blending, we're gonna do another video explaining how we do it, why we do it, and what it's useful for. And so I'm gonna do a couple without the board, but typically when I go straight from the board to without it, I struggle to get those moves to happen consistently. So I'm gonna actually blend it back and forth and go board, no board, board, no board after a couple swings and feeling that out. But launch with a step back. So I'm gonna go back to the board here. Something that I was feeling was when I stepped back, I was kind of shifting to that front side to step back, and I want to try to keep that back foot anchored into the ground as long as possible and feel like I'm in between both feet, or 50-50 as a coach would say. So now I'm gonna alternate back and forth, board, no board for a few. Kick the board a little too far, Hub. Do a couple more board and no board. Cool. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a similar thing where we're actually gonna go with a board, but I'm gonna do a stride stop. And so we're gonna do forward moves here with the back foot on a farm board. And so I'm gonna use the board as feedback. Something that I tend to do is I tend to stack, and as I get forward, I'll push forward and I'll get really heavy on my front side. And so what you wanna see is as I get forward, and I'm gonna do a smaller forward move today, a little bit more controlled, is when I get forward is I want to see this board not push back towards the catcher, but turn back towards the catcher late. And so as I get forward, that late turn is giving me feedback that I'm loading or coiling this back hip, swiveling with the hips. to get forward. And so I'm gonna do a handful of these stride stop swings where I'm really focused on getting to a good hitting position. And we posted a video about Matt Carpenter talking about this with his adjustments of how important a good hitting position is to get to. And so the reasoning why is too, if I don't get to a good hitting position, everyone talks about getting to a position to hit. Well, a lot of people don't actually get there with their forward move consistently. And so like he talks about in this video is when he gets to a good hitting position, he's already inside the baseball. He already has the spacing, he already has the angles created. He just has to then fire. And so that's what we talk a lot about, just getting to your position. A lot of people, when they get their forward move, they get these big moves, try to create force. They focus super heavily on timing, which timing is important. A lot of things are based on timing, but if you're not in control of the forward move, you're not in control of getting to that position, your timing is then not consistent. And so we got to get more consistent with our forward move to then be more consistent with the timing. If we have instability and I'm like pushing forward and falling, or I'm getting stuck, I'm not going to get to that launch position consistently, which is then going to affect my timing. So we're really going to practice just getting to that position consistently, to that hitting position with these stride stops with the board, and then we'll progress after this. And again, something that I really need to focus on is when I get to my hitting position or launch, sometimes I'll like to push and I'll feel like this back leg's long, and I want to feel 50-50 balanced, anchored with both feet and between my feet. A lot of different ways of saying the same thing while doing this. And so that's going to be my focus on this next swing, is when I get forward, I want to feel more weight on my back foot this time because I feel so heavily on my front those first couple. Not a bad little adjustment. Let's do one more of these. Okay, cool. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna mix it, and we're gonna go with the board, without the board, with the board, without the board, and blend this again. But without the board is also gonna be with a step back. And so not quite full swings yet, still stride stops, progressing up. And so now we're just gonna alternate. I'm gonna go same thing, stride stop with the board, stride stop without it. Trying to create that same feel without the board, like I'm swiveling forward, and then I'm gonna step back as well. So a little bit of a progression and a blend here to kind of end off the round. Felt myself push to get forward on that one. And you could really feel that with the farm board, where it may be a little bit harder without the board. That's why we like using the farm boards, for some good feedback. Cool. Cool. All right, so now last round, we're gonna go regular swings with the boards on the back foot. Here, again, really focus on getting to a good hitting position. And then too, as a byproduct of getting to that position, you'll see the board kick back a little bit behind me, helping me maintain space, helping me stay inside the baseball. Myself a little heavy, a little crash into the front side. I'm gonna really feel like I'm heavy on my back foot this swing. Bit up and away, yanked with the back a little bit. Up and in. Yank with the back a little bit. I'm gonna go one more with the board. Felt myself push forward on that one, gave up some space. Caused me to cut that ball instead of staying inside and staying through it. A little bit better. You can see with that board, did feel a little bit of a push, but not as drastic. More of a turn and then kick back behind me. Let's do one more without the board here. Cool. So, all right, so that'll be it for the hit with me. Again, really big focus on staying inside the ball, but first we have to create angles and spacing to get inside the ball. And so with that too, some of the drills really focused on my path and the spacing with my lower half too, to be able to have a clean path to get inside and stay inside. And so with that, you know, focusing on the upper body, lower body works differently for each individual hitter. We like to look at the lower half typically because we see how many issues arise from not having that space, not having the stability. But sometimes too, queuing up the upper half can clean up the lower. And so once again, you know, take some of those drills, take some of the ideas, try them, let us know what you think. And until next time.